Hey, what's happening? Welcome to Mage TV. So, a week ago, I was doing a video by the pool in California. 7 days on, 8. I am in a world where water falls from the sky. I've got my central heating on, and bleh. The moral of the story is that a week is a long time and many things can change. But we'll talk about that in a bit. What I want to talk about is Jude Bellingham. So, did a video on him earlier on in the summer talking about how he was an absolute no-brainer at almost any cost. What we've seen this week as Liverpool are smack dab in the middle of their 17-day enforced break from football is the fee being reported at around 130 million that Dortmund will deal on next summer, sparking all kinds of fears and recriminations and what have you. I want to talk about that price. I want to talk about the pros and cons of Jude Bellingham. I want to talk about the pros and cons of Liverpool's transfer strategy as well, because why not? Why not? Look, because like clockwork, every international break, and particularly ones that are exacerbated by Liverpool having games postponed prior to that, something's got to come out that just makes us feel a little bit worse about football, about Liverpool. Happened. It's like literally like clockwork. 13 years of watching this happen and talking about it on the internet. Some might say it might be the Darwin Núñez stuff. He absolutely cleaned some guy out in training and then put a shot into the corner flag. There's some doubts about his levels. There's always got to be something. Always got to be something. But I'm going to focus expressly on the Bellingham stuff because, and I think it's quite interesting to talk about. And I didn't think it was that interesting until I made, and you know how I'm getting real on a video, is oh yes, I've done mathematics in a notebook. Mathematics in a notebook. That basically means, yes, strap yourselves in because I've actually thought this one through. So what I've done is I've started with my pros and cons list, and I'm going to lead into a few extra points around that. So I'm going to start with the pros of Jude Bellingham. And look, you're not going to need to know these, but I'm going to say them for completeness sake. He's young. Okay, yeah, I guess that's a pro. He's potentially a generational talent. He's English, so he counts towards your homegrown tally. Not the proper homegrown tally, because you've got to be trained at the club for a number of years for that to count, but he's English, so it helps Liverpool fill out more squads when it comes to the Champions League, etc, etc. He's tall, he's fast, he's skillful, he's good on the ball, he's got an eye for a goal. Signing someone like Bellingham, I think, is a huge message to football, because there are some clearly identifiable footballers and you can look at them and go, yeah, it's going to be them. Erling Haaland was one. Kylian Mbappe was another one. I mean, you go back yonks now, but Neymar was certainly one of these kind of players. And these players move, and they often move to, or in the past would move to Real Madrid or Barcelona's. And because of the financial plight that those clubs have been through, it's not quite as nailed on that that's going to happen. La Liga isn't quite the draw that it once was, the way that in the 90s Serie A was. The Premier League remains a draw, so there's a chance that you go and buy one of these players, and it tells football that you're right. You're the apex predator of European football if you go and get one of those players. Manchester City have done it in Erling Haaland, and there's a chance for whoever signs Jude Bellingham to be the club that does that as well. And ultimately, the knock-on point to that is that it stops rivals. So the main fear around the Bellingham stuff is that if Liverpool don't get him, someone like Manchester City just go, okay, 130 million, whatever, slap off a few singles all over in the face of the Dortmund chairman, and then grab him and run back to England and presumably dominate all of football for all eternity. If you can get him, there's a feel like you've kind of struck a blow against the empire. You've kind of taken someone off, much like Liverpool did with Virgil van Dijk. Obviously, we didn't know the significance of it at the time, but City were very, very much in the hunt for Virgil van Dijk, and Liverpool worked their charms, worked their magic, and got that deal over the line eventually, and therefore bought the best centre-half. And Man City defensively have been playing catch-up ever since. They've had some good centre-halves. I mean, people think Ruben Diaz is really good, and Laporte as well, but defence has been City's biggest issue. Had they signed Van Dijk, it could have been a thing, and that's a great a lesson you'd hope that Liverpool have taken from that, maybe, potentially, maybe, yeah. Right, on to the cons. It's a short list. Con number one, young. He's young. I guess that's a con. It's both, and it can be both and it can be neither. But he is young. A lot happens between the age of like 20 and 23 that really, really defines your career as a footballer. I've seen so many young talents promise so much, and even at good levels, and then for whatever reason, just not quite kick on. Now, I think you're quite resistant to this in someone like Bellingham because you listen to his coaches and you listen to people talk who work around him. He's got the right attitude and right mentality. That can change, of course. But, I remember we had a show called Social Club back in the day, years ago now, on the Ball Street YouTube channel, and we used to sit down every Monday with like the likes of Talking TV and Arsenal Fan TV and countless others. And there was a point, and it's funny now to say it out loud, but we were talking about Ross Barkley and Dele Alli as like two generational English talents, and they one's akin to like Steven Gerrard and one's akin to Zinedine Zidane and blah 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 blah. It is laughable to say that out loud now. Laughable. And you're laughing away. I know. I can literally feel the laughter coming through time and space and the screen of my camera. I know it's mad. It seems mad to say that, but they were hot talents who had the world at their feet, and whether it's psychological or physiologically, it didn't quite happen for them to take them to that top level. Both came very, very close. Both ended up at Champions League sides, but neither have. Well, look, both of them are effectively free transfers at this point, having never truly dominated the game as a result. So the young thing can work both ways, and similarly unproven. And he's played Champions League football now. He's playing at a good level in the Bundesliga, but he's improving beyond that. Playing in the Championship as a kid isn't the one. It isn't necessarily the thing. Again, we've seen lads who have absolutely donned in other leagues come to the Premier League and not be able to hack it or certainly get it to the same level. I don't think there's going to be any. I imagine Jadon Sancho will come really good this season, but it's proof that Erling Haaland can come in and absolutely dominate for about the 6 games we've played so far, and probably going on in the future. Jadon Sancho's had a tougher time, and when you're paying massive money and you don't hit the ground running, then that becomes a bit of a negative spiral that follows it, and it becomes very hard to dig yourself out, and you're constantly playing against yourself, and you're playing against expectations, the weight of expectations that comes with the transfer fee as well. He's English. That's a con as well, because the English press absolutely hate football. They hate football. They hate footballers. He's going to have a torrid time coming back to England as an England international. He just will. It's horrible, disgusting that we even have to think about these things. And I don't think it will matter in Liverpool's thinking whatsoever, by the way. But it's more of a point about English players is that you need them for the homegrown quota. But the more English players you have, the more that you open up to scrutiny. It's like they're the players of the country, not your players. And that's always the arse about the nationalism in this country of like fellas who support York and Bath City taking ownership of your footballers a handful of times during the season and during major tournaments and slaughtering them and giving them stick when it's like, no, they're our players, be nice to them, or we won't let them out. Won't let them out to play. But yeah, there's an intense scrutiny that comes with being young and successful in English in this country. The best players are able to rise above it, but can they rise above it indefinitely? It's a consideration. Again, he looks like he's made of sterner stuff. I imagine it will be fine, but it certainly is it is a thing that comes with the job. The biggest con, well, it's two really. It's 130 million. It's 130 million pounds. You're entering into the top bracket, and you had to wonder whether they get back there in the post-COVID world. That is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. When you consider what Liverpool have bought for big money in the past, effectively you're rebuying Virgil van Dijk and Alisson for that kind of money. That's Phil Coutinho money, and we all know Phil Coutinho was not worth the money that Liverpool were into Barcelona for, and because of that, it's something you do need to be careful of. When you get drawn into that market, then you're in that market. You're a club that can afford to pay £130 million for a footballer, so all of a sudden the 20 to 30 to 40 million pound footballer that maybe you want as a side piece of business becomes a 70 million pound footballer, and the 50 to 60 to 70 million pound becomes again 100 to 110, 120 million pound footballer. And then the pressure on successful recruitment goes absolutely through the roof. And my biggest concern with paying 130 million pounds for it is, I think, and my immediate thought on that is that it's a failure of your recruitment process, because you shouldn't be spending 130 million pounds on footballers. You should be getting them before they get to that stage, being perfectly honest. Now, let's put that all to one side, because it's a point I believed when I sat down to do this. When I sat down to take my notes this morning, that was where I kind of fell down on it. Is if you're having to spend like world record levels of dough on a player, then that doesn't really say you're very good at recruitment. That says that you're not very good at recruitment, because if you're signing obvious players for mega money, that's very Manchester United, shall we say. Look, United, it's worked at times for them. It's failed spectacularly for them, and it's more often than not in the last decade been failure than success. It's a dangerous path to go down. Liverpool have created themselves, like the entire history of Liverpool, they have spent money when it's been needed to be spent, but they've made stars, not bought them. They've bought lads who are ready to step up, who are on the cusp of becoming brilliant footballers. You think Kenny Dalglish, Kevin Keegan, Fernando Torres, great example, Luis Suarez, great examples of this. It doesn't sit comfortably with me when you go out and spend mega money on footballers, and particularly when you're spending mega money on guys in their early 20s as well. It's just not something we've done, and therefore it sits uncomfortably with me. But if you do it right, Rafa Benitez, and I'm paraphrasing, we're talking about getting the missing leg for your table. It's not about getting the most expensive leg, it's about getting the right leg. But if the right leg happens to be the most expensive leg, then it's the right leg, and it costs what it costs, and someone of that kind of talent is sound. My thing on the recruitment policy, £130 million is too much for a footballer, I think. And it says to me, you would logically say you should be able to go out and get someone for cheaper than that who's going to fulfill your system potential or the roles that you need them to. What I did to work it out, and this is an oversimplification. Welcome to HTV, the home of oversimplifications of complicated thoughts. What I've done, and this is where the mathematics comes into this one, so I thought of it from this perspective, and I thought of it from Liverpool's recruitment process in general. I thought of it from Liverpool's midfield recruitment process. So Liverpool bring in Thiago for 20-odd million pounds. You're looking 30 to 40 for Fabinho. Jordan Henderson has been so long at the football club now that he's effectively free. But Liverpool broke it, 16 million, I think they paid for him, or 11, 12, whatever he is, we're on now, over a decade ago. That was very, very expensive for what they bought him for at the time. They also spent nearly £40 on 40 million pounds on Oxlade-Chamberlain, £50 million on Naby Keita, etc., etc. But they're looking to reboot this midfield. The lads in their prime, as we've talked about in previous videos, Keita, Ox, have not taken the team on. They've not grasped their chance. They've not made themselves fixtures in the first team for a variety of reasons, which is not for today. It's the older lads who've kept hold of their places. Jordan Henderson will still get game time for Liverpool because he deserves game time for Liverpool, because he's fought, scrapped, and he fits in this Liverpool side. Thiago's so good that he will stay for a couple of years. If Gini Wijnaldum had less contract demands, he'd probably still be a Liverpool footballer, etc., etc. James Milner's still getting games because he's so good and he's so useful, and all those things that tied into it. But Liverpool have got to start to refresh for the future, and that process has begun. And what I used to always say was about Liverpool's transfer policy and Liverpool's academy was you need to follow La Masia. And by that is you generate players who are good enough for your first 11, and then if you can generate a star, you are laughing. Absolutely laughing. You can get a generational talent through your academy, that's great, but that's not something you can rely upon. But what you can do is you can grow good quality first team footballers, and they might end up not only squad footballers, but squad footballers are squad footballers. They're £40 million is like the going rate for a squad footballer at the top end of European football in the Premier League these days. So if you can get lads from your academy and they can be your second choice. Look, Curtis Jones is a good example of this, but like Trent Alexander-Arnold, generational talent, laughing, he's £100 and something odd million player because he's that good. What you wanted to do was bring Nico Williams up underneath him, and then he's just a squad player at a good level, but he just helps pad out your squad a little bit. We've not quite got there, but we're also not a million miles away from it. And when you do that, what you then do in the Barcelona model is you then go and spend big money on key components of your team. You save money with bringing talent through, and then you've got more dough to burn on more brilliant individuals. And that was hit and miss for Barcelona, by the way, because I think about how many centre forwards they tried to plug in during the 2000s, but that was broadly the model they were going for. So working on that, and what I did was, I saw Jude Bellingham, let's say 131 million pounds. Harvey Elliott comes in at around 3, let's just say 3, these are very rough numbers for the sake of argument. Carvalho was around 10 million pounds, and Curtis Jones, academy prospect, comes through the books, free transfer. Sound. Okay, that roughly adds up to 144 million pounds, and that's 4 footballers. And that's potentially Liverpool's main midfield options. That's the hope. Whether you agree or disagree on the quality of these footballers is by the by. These are the players that Liverpool have either brought in or have groomed ready to take on the mantle. £144 million divided by 4 equals 36 million. So, all of a sudden, Jude Bellingham at £130-ish million in isolation is a ridiculous amount of money. But when you spread it across a policy, and you're saying, well, our midfield is roughly costing us about 30 to 40 million pounds a footballer, then that is a recruitment process. That is a transfer strategy, and that is a transfer strategy that I can get behind, that I'm sure you can get behind, and hopefully Liverpool Football Club have been doing this. If that's what they've been doing, if that's what they've been planning, then that is absolutely wonderful, wonderful planning. Now, odds are they'll go and buy another £40 million football, and all of a sudden, you're basically paying next to nothing field, and that'll be even better because they'll have more money in the bank to expand the stadium and make the training ground even bigger. All good things, by the way. But yeah, and look, just for the sake of talking it out, let's say you take Carvalho out of that. Let's say he's a front 3 player, so you're talking about Bellingham, Jones, and Elliott. And look, is that a rounded midfield 3? No, but we'll talk about that in a second. You're looking at, divide that by 3, obviously taking Carvalho's transfer fees, it works out about £44 million a footballer. But if you were to add like Stefan Bajcetic in, who's a very, very hot prospect, 17-year-old, could well be one of the future prospects in Liverpool's midfield. So instead, you're now dividing it by 5, and one of them is a nominal fee footballer added into the mix in Bajcetic. It's £28.8 million a footballer. Yes, that, my friends, is a transfer strategy, and that is why £130 million remains a no-brainer for Liverpool to go back into the market for Jude Bellingham next summer. Agree? Disagree? Let me know in the comments section underneath. Yeah, a couple of bits of housekeeping. Redmen TV, my other channel, is very, very close to 500,000 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed to that channel yet, go over there. Great post and during match content, some very special things, and a great competition coming up soon when we hit 500k as well. And the guys over on the 888 Sport channel are discussing the best ever English strikers. What I want you to do, and I've been encouraging everyone to do, and I've done this already, is go over there and click the link in the description underneath, or the end card at the end of the video, and put Robbie Fowler. Just say mate says, and I agree, it's Robbie Fowler. Because it's all about Michael Owen, it's Robbie Fowler. Simple as. Right, I'm going to play out on a clip. Have a wonderful day, wonderful week. Hopefully, you'll be seeing the Legends game or the Women's game at the weekend, and then the footy will return before we know it, and we can get back to just loving Liverpool Football Club on a twice-weekly basis. Yeah? Yeah, in a bit.
Okay, going through on goal. Fate of the universe on the line. Who's taking the slot?
Out of this lot.
Out of this slot. Going through on goal.
Let's be honest.
Literally going through on goal, one-on-one.
All of them.
All of them.
Yeah, all of them.